Thank you for coming, Bob. Good to see you. Okay, I've known Bob for too long. He's a great guy. Everybody knows Bob. He's a fantastic guy. The sad news about tonight, though, is I'm not going to be asking the questions. And the reason is two reasons. I couldn't be partial because I couldn't answer the hardball questions. I could pass it over to Jay because I love Bob too much. No, I can't be partial. I'm just kidding about that. I had a prior commitment, so I'm supposed to leave 6 minutes ago. So, but Jay's going to ask the questions. Senator's going to go ahead and answer them like he always does, and then he's going to stick around for a little bit afterwards. But I think he's got a prior commitment too, so he's going to hopefully get to all your questions. Most of you put your names and your emails on the sheets, which is fantastic. So have fun with Hertzberg. Bob, why don't you take a few minutes and talk about yourself, which I know you love to do, and talk about what we're doing up in Sacramento, or what you guys are supposed to be doing up in Sacramento.
What the California Association of Realtors is doing, is that what you want to know?
I'm leaving.
I'm leaving. Here, what's it? I can't hug you, but you can hug me. Come here.
This hugging stuff is wrong. He's a good hugger. Anyone who wants a hug, get it from Hertzberg. Huggy Bear.
Hi, everybody. Works here, man. You're in the neighborhood.
Hello,
Man, oh man, the Shevitz. Listen, a lot of familiar faces. I've been around for a long time. And I've been around for a long time, and I mostly want to take time to answer questions. Barry, who you met, is my deputy chief of staff. She is a road warrior. What she didn't tell you about the intern program is we now, Hannah's over there, is running the program. More than 350, not just kids, senior citizens, people all across the board, working and making a contribution to government. And in the old days, interns, like when I started out 45 years ago as an intern, you know, you get coffee and you drive the car and all those types of things. But with the advent of research and computers today, it's extraordinary what kind of impacts we can make. I've introduced laws based upon intern suggestions, and they've been extremely important, particularly the housing and homeless issues, of which this is their research. It's been incredible. So again, I make that plug. And two of our interns are here, Margaret and Adolfo. They're over there. I saw them when I came in. Where are they? Right back there. There's Margaret, and Adolfo is here somewhere. There he is over there. Been part of our operation. And my significant other here, Dr. Catherine Tellis, who's a criminologist. She runs the largest crime lab in the United States of America. She's the director. And I just want you to know the name of that crime lab is the Hertzberg Davis Forensic Science Center. We deliver. Thanks, everybody. But I most days want to answer questions. You know, I'm now, I used to be speaker way back when, left for a lot of years, came back. Now I'm the majority leader. So I am much more deeply involved. And it's the bad news in terms of how hard it is to work. The good news, it's good for us in the San Fernando Valley. And unfortunately, you know, as time passes, we lost Howard Berman, we lost Henry Waxman, we lost Zev Yaroslavsky from term limits and various things. And so, you know, I feel like I'm the newbie, and now I'm the senior person around. So I'm trying to help the other legislators along to make sure that they understand the importance of fighting for the valley, standing up. Not bending, not knuckling, but fighting for the community, and that's what I've been doing, and trying to help all of them along the way. So I guess, you know, there's so many things I can talk about, and this housing and homeless thing is driving me nuts. And it's driving me nuts because we were talking the other day in the car, at the office, you know, the time it takes to get anything done, the cost it takes, I'm just tired of it. I just, before I came here, literally had a committee vote. I have a safe parking bill. There was another safe parking bill. And the safe parking bill says we're going to implement it with not-for-profits by January 2022. And I said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This should be done now. January 2022? I am sick and tired of it. And I'm going to stand up on the floor of the Senate and I'm going to make a big ruckus, is what I said. You can look at the tape. Those are my exact words. But I am sick and tired of it. I just have a sense of urgency. We were talking about getting approvals within 30 days. That's what should happen. You know, when you look at this whole larger dynamic with respect to the homeless issue, I'm telling you, my judgment, as a number of you heard from me talk privately, is Nobody lives on the streets. Nobody lives on the streets. That's the starting point. Now, that does not mean you don't provide services. That doesn't mean you don't take care of people. But if you don't start with that position, you're sitting there spending all your time living in the bureaucracy. You're taking these cats in the uniforms and you're making them spend all the time inventorying stuff and dealing with people when they should be dealing with other things in our community. We just gotta cut it out. We got to cut it out in terms of time. We got to cut it out in terms of speed to get stuff done. There was an article on the front page of the paper that exactly reflected my frustration. Here I am, the Senate Majority Leader, and when this homeless people from Los Angeles came up, we wrote them a check for $89 million last year. I was at a service with the mayor. He sits next to me and shows me a photocopy of a check, a Sedona, for $89 million bucks. And then they come back up to us asking for more money. I said, what the hell did you do with the money we just gave to you? What has happened? All you people here voted for tax dollars for stuff. What's happened? The homeless people come to my office and they say, well, we have all these projects in the pipeline. Pipeline. What's built? What are you doing? How are you getting it done? We have to move quickly. These are extraordinary challenges. People don't have confidence in government when it's all words. You got to make it happen. And so, literally, in my caucus, I'm pushing like crazy for performance standards. The governor's going to come out next week with his plan, with some pretty tough medicine in it. So I think that, that's what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm trying to bring resources to the San Fernando Valley in every way possible, all across the valley. We can talk about that because that's kind of the big part of my job, to make sure that we get you guys pay the tax dollars, and I got to bring it home. Make sure that the other committees get taken care of, but we've been taken care of in a very good way. So I think the best thing to do, I've got a homeless pets bill that I guess got $5 million in the budget for, because as I went around and started talking to neighborhood councils, people are telling me how many people are homeless who have pets. And so I created a program, got it funded, I'll get the bill passed, don't worry, got the money, because something like in LA County, 25% of the people that are homeless have pets, and they won't go into a shelter because they don't leave their pet behind. I don't care what the heck you got to spend. Bring their pets in, provide them, get them off the street, help people out, right? Safe parking, the same thing. Creative ways where you can get people, whether it's provide the services in parking areas. My question for me that I keep asking in all of these endeavors I engage in is, how do we create immediate results for the process and the problems we're trying to achieve, rather than the long-term stuff? We're all talking about SB 50, okay? Well, the reality of SB 50, in my judgment, whether you're for it or against it, I voted against it, the first one to do so. But the question is, when is a certificate of occupancy going to be given? When is that going to happen? When are you going to start having an impact beyond just more noise, beyond 2022 or 2025 or whatever the case may be? When you guys are in my office, Ray and John, you guys, I have 3 kind of principles, and we're going to see something. Do we have a marker here? Yeah, not very big, but we'll take it. To me, on the housing piece, there's 3 things that have to happen. It's pretty damn simple. 3 things. Just a repeat for you guys. 1, you got to get land. Land cost. If you guys can read this, that's not everything. Land cost, right? The biggest issue is in LA. If you're going to buy land in Oklahoma or in Idaho, it's not so expensive. Here, land is expensive, correct? A lot of money. Increases the cost. How do you have affordable housing when the piece of land costs millions of dollars? Big problem. So what we're doing in the state, we've identified 40,000 pieces of state land. We're down to 1,300. It's now down even further to 544 pieces of land. I just met with the head of real estate for General Services. I'm going to bring him down to the San Fernando Valley. We're going to find places where the state has land, and I want to make a deal where we do long-term leases for $1 a year for affordable housing developers, so that you eliminate the land costs, so that you can make it affordable, because the land's too high. The second is approvals. Approvals. You can't read this very much. Approvals. How long do they take, and how much do they cost? Right? You got to expedite the approval process. If it takes a year to approve any project, you're not getting something built. I I know it sounds unreasonable, as we talked about, but I'm going to stick with it. 30 days. I'm sorry, the city of Los Angeles. You guys can make your choices, council members, but you got to get it approved. This timeline is crazy if all of a sudden it's fast. And the third element is money. Where does the money come from to pay for these projects? One of the great things that President Trump has done, I'm a nonpartisan, and I always tell the truth, he did something that's really interesting. How many people in the room have heard the notion of opportunity zones? Anybody heard of opportunity zones? Basically, in a nutshell, in the simplest terms, what opportunity zones are, there's 879 of them, and I will post on my website, Barry, the ones that are in San Fernando Valley, and in each one of those opportunity zones, if you have a tax bill, a state tax bill, you can get a tax credit, you can get a deferral of your taxes if you invest in one of those opportunity zones. We have legislation, and I'm doing a whole thing on opportunity zones, where if you invest in affordable housing in an opportunity zone, you get to have your taxes deferred. That bill gets deferred. It's like a tax credit. The federal government has it, 13.3%, the highest rate in the state. So state and federal taxes. I have somebody working for me for 5 months doing nothing full-time but on opportunity zones. So within those opportunity zones, we can provide the cash. So if you have land for $1, quick approvals, and cash to pay for it, we can build. And the last thing is, in terms of what to build, I'm kind of taking a tough love standard with the city and county. The idea is, hey, then these will be special zones for housing, which we'll deal with. But the idea is, the city has a lot of land. There's 2,200 acres sitting in Sepulveda Basin. 2,200 acres. Most of that's owned by the federal government, by the Army Corps of Engineers. You know that. But some of it's the city and stuff. Hey, you know what? You guys come to us and ask us for money, money, money. We want land, 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 so we can get this stuff done and expedite the process. It won't be perfect, but the reality is we need to build about 5,000 units of housing in San Fernando Valley a year. That's our contribution. In addition to the homeless issue, we need to be able to construct about 5,000 units. We're doing pretty well now. There's a lot going on in the city of Los Angeles. Zev Yoslavsky told me that he talked to the head of planning, and we have more units being built, permitted now, than any time since 1981. Good news, not good enough. But so, you know, my approach to life is not to be a bellyacre, but to be a fixer, to figure it out. If I'm going to tell you that SB 50 stinks, okay, I'm going to come up with an alternative. I'm going to come up with an alternative to figure out how to deal with the issue, and that's what we're trying to do. So I'm bringing to you, all of us are coming together, all the legislators, as soon as we're on break, from all corners of the San Fernando Valley. We're going to put our heads together with all the best experts, and we're going to really try to come up with a plan so we have a constructive approach, that we're making a contribution to the larger issue, not being part of the problem. The argument against us all the time, which is wrong, which is inaccurate, fake news, is that the San Fernando Valley is a place of just single-family homes, of a place that's NIMBYs, and that's just not true. I have not found that. What San Fernando Valley is a place of opportunity, of dreams, and of smart people who want to solve problems in a way that works for everybody. That's what I've found in all of my years being involved, and you guys are a big part of that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think the best thing to do, Jay, is just ask away, and I will answer away. Sedona.
First, Jules has to say something.
Jules, baby.
Okay. The battery's bad.
Here you go. Take mine.
Take all three.
First of all, I want to remind everybody that we will not be having a meeting in July. Our next SOHA meeting is third Wednesday in August, the 21st. Lastly, please clean up the tables, because if not, Linda Weitzler and my children will have to clean up all the tables. Thank you.
Don't count on it.
Okay, it's going to work.
Now again, like Matt says every week, if I don't get to your question, it's not because I don't love you, not because I don't respect your question, but we have a lot of good questions tonight. A couple not so good, doesn't matter. That's only my opinion. If we don't get to your question, Senator Hertzberg will be here afterwards, and you can also, his representative will be here. You can also send him an email or call him up on the telephone. I can actually read most of them, which is a pretty good start. So I know many people tonight are interested in the housing issue, but I want to throw some softballs to the senator first to get a chance to warm up a little bit with some other and kind of interesting questions, actually. Noel Weiss, is Noel here?
Right there. Did you talk about gold?
Noel wants to know what the future of the state bank is, which he says is a bill that you sponsored.
Well, there's two bills on state banks. There's one bill, and the other's not really going anywhere, the idea of creating a state bank. And is it North Dakota, is that the one that has a state bank? You know, I'm not a big believer in the state bank, to be honest with you. I met with a bunch of people on it. If you go to my office, there's a big book on it and stuff. Because a place like North Dakota has no banking institutions. Anybody who's been in the financial business around here, in California, we have every kind of financial institution under the sun, and we don't need that extra stuff. And we also have extremely sophisticated investors at the Treasurer's office getting great rates of return for the public dollars. So I don't think so. But the other thing that I am doing is marijuana. I don't like the issue, I don't know anything about it, but somebody came up with an idea to have a state bank for marijuana because the federal government won't allow us to put cash from the sale of marijuana into regular banks. So what's happening is, a friend of mine who represents the north part of the state says, there's, just so you guys know, in case you're interested, there's $2 billion buried in cash in barrels in Northern California. A fellow walks into my office and he says, I got $40 million in a tractor trailer, what do I do with it? I said, I got an idea. 40 million bucks, casherini, in Beacon's boxes sitting in the back of a trailer. And so what I'm trying to do is, given the fact that the federal government says that marijuana can't be deposited in those banks and you can't get FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation insurance, is to create a separate state chartered bank to accept deposits. There's 923 branches of banks in California that are sitting around that have closed. A lot of empty branches, you've probably seen them around. So you can easily rent them, use their vaults, and deposit the cash, and then create a special check. Those checks can only be used for four purposes. One, to pay your rent. So if you're a landlord and you got somebody, you have to have somebody coming in with $10,000 of Greeno to give to your receptionist, you can actually take a check and deposit it and then open up your own account for that. Two, to pay for vendors. If you're a plumber, the plumber goes out to put pipes in, to put for plants or whatever, for vendors. Three, to pay government, state, city, counties. If you look at our budget in the state of California, we're paying for police escorts, we're paying for bulletproof glass, we're paying for all this stuff. And if we can get checks, it's easier to manage. And lastly, if you have money, we'll be able to take it at the Treasurer's office to buy state bonds. You know, I mean, I'm sure that the LAPD in this room will tell you that they've had to experience all kinds of issues when people are getting robbed for cash, and we've seen all kinds of stories. This is a big public safety issue. It has a lot of things. So I got it done last year. It's now over in the, I passed it out of the Senate. I'll get it done. It's urgency legislation. I just met with the banking commissioner last week. It'll be in place pretty quickly. And so I think it'll really be a smart move to how to manage all this cash in a way that works.
Is Earl Bender here? Earl is standing over there in the corner, and Earl asked a question that some other people here might be very interested in. He's curious about the state laws on estate taxes and what the status is with some present proposals.
Dead. We in the California Senate have made a decision, no new taxes this year. Don't worry, we'll get you later. But we believe, we will, I'm just telling you the truth, but we believe we believe that with all this surplus, it's not right to go ask people for new cash, okay? So there was a proposal on inheritance tax, it's been shelved this year. There's been about 15 proposals on taxes, including my proposal for service tax, all of which have been shelved. The only issue that's open, and which we talked about today, is a fee on your telephone bill for 911 for 34 cents a month to increase the 911 system. And the reason that's so important is when the 911 system started, we didn't have texts. We didn't have the early earthquake warning systems. We didn't have all the security systems that they have for calling the police. We didn't have all that stuff, which put such a burden. So the idea is, and we're debating this because it requires 2/3 votes, but to put 34 cents on people's bill a month for 911, which I think will pass. Outside of that, everything else, even this water tax that we talked about, that's been shelved. So that's been the approach we've taken. I think it's the right thing. I've supported it.
Michelle Florman. Michelle, who is just in the back over there, asks a
Where's she?
variety of...
Hi, Michelle.
She has a variety of questions.
Okay.
Let's take an easy one for you. She's kind of annoyed at the price of health insurance, and she wants to know what the state is actively doing to keep health insurance rates under control, and what, if anything, is the state doing to examine the denial of claims presented to insurance companies.
Well, a couple things. Number one is the governor came up with a pretty smart proposal to pool purchase of pharmaceuticals because they're so expensive. We're working in a much better way to dramatically reduce the cost of pharmaceuticals. Second, I'm looking at the idea, I know this is really controversial, but it just pisses me off. Kate will tell you this because I say it all the time. I can't stand all those commercials on television. How much are they spending for those commercials? If they didn't spend all that damn money on commercials, the cost of drugs would be cheaper. You know? And I know it's probably not constitutional because it's national, but I want to do it anyway. I just want to see them sweat. So you might see me do that. Thirdly, we've just in the budget put in, I can't remember any hundreds of millions of dollars, but basically to supplement our payment to help people pay for the cost of their insurance. It's a middle class basic, I apologize off the top of my head, I've seen so many thousands of numbers in this budget, but a big chunk of money for people who are having a hard time. I think it's up to 250% of poverty level, which means like $150,000. You could get, we'll buy down and help reduce the cost of your insurance. Those three things. I give you more, but everybody else will get bored.
Is there anything the state can do to have these companies limited as to how much they charge, or can they just charge what they want to charge without government intervention?
Well, I mean, that's what the Obamacare thing that everybody wants to complain about did in a lot of ways, in terms of the mandate, the coverage to your 26, and the like. I mean, there's, to me, the cost, doctors aren't making a lot of money anymore, right? Where's the money? It's pharmaceutical companies that are making huge money, right? That are making the dough. Insurance companies, what their rate of return is, and what's the third one? There's another one's a big hitter. Oh, all the machine companies. Every time there's a new machine that costs $25 million to test your earlobes or something. And those are the people that are making all the dialysis, and all those big people are making money. But we're really on it. But obviously there's a discussion about a single payer type plan. But it's one of those things where everybody likes the word, but no one understands what it really means to everybody else. So we're working on it. The governor's going to do something about it. But the way the federal government works, there's not much further we can do about it under the circumstances. The way the power shifts between governments. Yes?
Michelle Florman asked the second question, which is another slam dunk, easy question for you to answer.
Yes.
She wants to know what in the world we're doing about the Department of Motor Vehicles. Online, in the office, these waits are nuts. And those are her words. Crazy nuts, I think.
No, you're absolutely right. Basically, we've got a person who I just adore. Miss Maribel Batcher, she worked for Arnold, she worked for the governor of Nevada and stuff. She's her full-time jobs to work on this. I think we put like $300 or $400 million. I may be off by my numbers, I can't remember. A huge amount of money to just kill off the backlogs. All of these happening from that Real ID thing. But I got to tell you, there are some things about the department that are working better in terms of online, where you can get registrations and some other things that work better. But we have, it's probably the largest new item in the budget to basically fix really just put an army on this to fix this. So it's something the governor really gets, and we passed the budget last Thursday. And when you pass budgets, the way the budget works, it's always kind of crazy. We pass a budget, and that was done on the 13th, and then we have what's called trailer bills. A trailer bill connects a bill to the budget. And what does it mean? So if you have a line item in the budget that says Department of Motor Vehicles, $300 million, right? You then have a separate bill that's connected to the budget that explains the rules of how that's done. We passed 12 trailer bills on Monday. We're going to pass 9 tomorrow, and we've got a few more, and we've already passed the one for the DMV. And that means they go into effect the 1st of July, which means that stuff's going to roll pretty fast. This is a big deal for the governor. We've got really good people on it. So you'll see some change in the next few months.
Chuck Betts has a quick question also. Chuck's over
Over
there
there.
by the door.
Yeah.
He wants to know, because nobody ever knows what happens to the deposits for your bottles and your cans. You go to the market, they charge you next to the nickel for everything that you take out. Where's the money go?
There's a whole infrastructure in the state. There's a board, all the money goes into the deposits into this board, and then the board takes the money. There's an appointed board, and it oversees all that cash to do stuff that relates to recycling and all that stuff. I can't hear you, what?
Are you speaking to me? I can't hear you.
Yeah, that has been, what he's saying is every so many miles, there's supposed to be a recycle bin. Ralph's on Ventura doesn't have it. It's true, it's been a big fight over how many recycle bins. There's an internal fight about whether or not these stores don't want to do them because it costs them too much money. It's been the last 2 or 3 years, it's been a big fight about it because they want more money to go in to pay for, stuff that relates to recycling. I'll circle back with Ed Pence. I can give you some more details. I got some stuff on it, but I don't want to fuck everybody. What's next?
One last...
Remind me, Barry.
One last relatively non-controversial question. Where do you stand on daylight versus standard time? And is California going to switch back to standard time?
We voted, I voted for putting it on the ballot. The voters voted for it, but it's a constitutional, it's an issue at the, it's an issue in the federal government. So I did support it, but it's a federal government decision, but we put it on the ballot, and you guys voted for it too.
Let's get back a little bit to housing, because the vast majority of questions really have to do with housing. And one of the things that a whole bunch of people have asked, there's a term that's been going around in the last week or so called gut and amend. Can you explain what gut and amend is?
Here's how gut and amend works. I just want you to know I've done it, gut and amends before. I'm admitting it, I'm an abuser of the gut and amend process, so I'm not like some pure person. And one of the gut and amends I did was for SOHA. What happened years ago, I don't know where people were on this, but one of the big reasons the Valley secession issue years ago was so problematic was that in the 70s, somebody slipped something in the law that if you wanted to split away from a city, you had to you do a vote in the area that wanted to leave. But only for Los Angeles, there was a special rule that said the city council had a right to a veto. In addition, they slipped into the law, and I did a gut and amend on this, that if you have to circulate petitions to gather signatures, everybody in the state had 180 days, except Los Angeles, 90 days. So when we heard about this, Richard actually called me, Mr. Close, 20 years ago when I was speaker. Governor Wilson was the governor, and I did a gut and amend in 17 days. I got the law fixed, bada boom. But here's how it works. In legislatures, laws are introduced, they're bills. They go through committees in both houses, they're voted on. If they pass out, it goes to the governor. He can veto it, or she can veto it one way or the other. There's two basic models of legislatures. The United States Congress has a model that basically you can introduce a bill any day of the week. The last day of session, you can introduce a bill. That lends itself to a certain kind of abuse. And so in California, about 30 some years ago, we changed the process. We have a deadline-driven process. And what you do is you have a certain amount of time to introduce a bill. As of that date, which was like February 28th, that's all the bills that can be introduced. Those are all of them. No new bills get introduced. Those bill goes from committee to committee to committee. It's almost like a cars on a racetrack. That's the limited number of bills. So what happens is, if a bill goes through the Senate, say, and goes to the Assembly, and I don't want to use it anymore, what I do is, and let's assume the bill had to do with agriculture. Doesn't matter, whatever it's about. Could be public safety. And I want to turn it into SB 50. What I do is, I just take the bill, if it's my bill, or I rip it off from somebody else, and I amend it, where I strike out all the contents for the agricultural district, and then in my amendment, I put my new things in. It's called a gut and amend. And so what happens is, people do this all the time, and we control it. like on SB 50, if the language gets in, you know, we'll control it because it's called what's called a jailbreak. You can't go and pass something and hold it and then go and redo it someplace else. But you could have things like we had in the Valley, where we were at the end of session, we learned that we had a problem and we needed to get a vehicle. I couldn't introduce a new bill because we only had a limited number of vehicles on the track. So I found a vehicle that had lost in a committee, right? It died in a committee because it didn't have the votes. So I picked it up because it had a bill number. I put in the Valley information in it and passed it and got it passed. That's what a gutted amend is. That system of how we legislate. So there's a limitation on the number of bills. Just to give you some sense of bill numbers, right now, because the Assembly has a 50-member per member bill limit, there are 1,073 bills in the Senate from the Assembly. In the Senate, we only passed 530, that's all. And I just want you to know, the interns in my office, I had them go through all 29 codes to look at ideas. Like, we put all these new laws on the books all the time. Let's put something up, let's take something off. So today I argued this bill. I found a bill that was the Posse Comitatus Act of 1872. It basically made you a criminal if a sheriff picked up the phone and called you, back then no phones, but went by your place on the horse and said, I want you to come and join this posse. And it was initially created to go after runaway slaves. This is still on our books. You can believe this. Wait a second, it's worse. Let me tell you something. So I went, and you get a misdemeanor and a $1,000 fine if you fail to join the posse. So I figured, we got to get rid of this. So the interns came with the idea. It's come through the Senate. It's passed. Now it's in the Assembly. And the sheriffs are opposing me because they want to keep it on the books. And I got it passed. But it's funny how that works. I want to take some books off. So literally, I'm looking around. There's things about women, what size glasses they can wear. There's all these crazy laws. I want to take them off the books to be able to make a statement that we don't just pass laws, we get rid of them sometimes. So, but that's kind of how the system works, if that's helpful.
Well, now, your illustration of gutted amend relative to the secession issue makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure that most of us don't have a lot of problems with that. But it seems in the last couple of weeks that a situation has arisen that's perhaps been just a little bit more obtuse. As I understand it, we had a bill that had passed certain committees in the Assembly, I think, and it was about extending the period of time for registration for barbers and cosmetologists. Somehow or another, our friend Senator Weiner gets a hold of that bill, and you can explain how he's able to do it, turns that bill into a revisit to Senate Bill 50. Now, while I see the relationship with your situation that you explained, I personally, and probably many other people here, don't quite understand how a bill extending time for registration of cosmetologists and being examined, presumably, for its merits, can have those merits pushed aside after they've already passed through some legislation, whatever, and then be changed into a totally different bill, and one that's, in particular, a very hot button bill, at least for this area.
Well, look, it's no different. It got the men. In the old days, when I was speaker a long time ago, we had what's called germaneness. If you wanted to find, you had to find a bill on the same subject matter. Today, that I come back and there's no germaneness here. But Senator Weiner is a pretty smart guy. He's pushing his issue. That's what everybody does, you know. And we'll deal with it. You know, he's got to, if he has this bill. You know, there's 40 members of the Senate. There's 80 members of the Assembly. Adrien is one of your Assembly members. Jesse Gabriel's an Assembly member. Christine Smith's an Assembly member. Luce Rivas is an Assembly member. In this valley, there's me and Henry Stern. I represent 1 million people. He represents 1 million people. But ultimately, we all have one vote. But if he introduces it, he introduces it. He's got to get it passed. He's got to get it past the Assembly floor. He's got to come back to the Senate. He's got to have the committee heard again in the Senate. All that's got to happen in a very short order. We actually meet in the state, in the legislature, more days than the United States Congress, if you can believe that. It's unbelievable. So the way it works is we're in session now. I got to go back up tonight because I got those budget bills in the morning. I got to run the Senate floor to make sure that all happens. And then we, on the 12th of July, we're out for a recess. We come back in the 12th, I think, of August, and then we go till, I think, September 13th, and then we're out until the end of the year. That's when we write new bills and do stuff in the community, and you'll see me more around when we're around. That's kind of how it works. So there's a short window. You know, look, you just got to watch these things. It's nothing new. There's all kinds of controversial items that this happens, and you know, just stay on your toes, sharpen your game, and we'll keep watching it. I'm watching it. Don't worry about that. Don't worry.
This particular bill has now, after it's been gutted and amended, has it avoided any examination by any of the members of the legislature? Because apparently it's being gutted and amended. In this case, meant it had gone through a certain process, had been approved by certain committees, and has now been changed. So it doesn't have to go back to the beginning?
Yeah. What'll happen is, in these kinds of bills, just to make sure, give people a comfort level, if somebody took a bill relating to barbers and cosmetologists, and it went through the Business and Professions Committee, and they gut and amended it, the chair of the Housing Committee will call it back to discuss it in housing, right? It will also come, once it goes, then it goes to appropriations in the Assembly, then it will come to the Senate, and it's not like, oh, it just comes for concurrence. The Housing Committee will call it back, Appropriations will call it back, all these other committees will call it back, so it does. So even though what already happened did not get a fresh look, this will all get a fresh look. It won't be ignored. Don't worry about that. I know there's some concern about it, but, and also because there's so much attention to this, that no one's going to just run this thing through the system.
Isn't Senator Weiner the chair of the Housing Committee?
So in essence, he gets an extra bite at the apple, but the apple's still going to be chewed up?
Yeah.
All right. In the paper this morning, or on the news last night, there was some discussion about Google building a certain amount of housing up north.
$1 billion.
Fair amount of housing. It's kind of like building a, what do you call it, a company town.
Yeah.
And I think that's been discussed before. How do you stand on that? Do you think it would be a good idea for the state to give incentives to various businesses to build housing when they become as large as a Google or Netflix or Hulu or all these tech companies that are expanding like crazy? Would that help us solve our affordable
Absolutely
housing?
it would.
Should it be encouraged?
100%.
How would you encourage it?
Well, no, I mean, I think they got a lot of money, but you know, the idea is that if they go, they can use their tax obligations and build opportunity zones. We can expedite the proceedings to move stuff quicker for them. The details of it, but I did vote for the Skinner bill, just so you know. I don't cut and run. I walked headed to the truth. I voted for it. You know, and as Senate Majority Leader, it's different, the job is. I know some people got pissed at me because I didn't go cut up Weiner. Because Weiner came to me, he's a gentleman, he's got his own point of view, I completely disagree with him. And it wasn't until we got to committee when I heard the bill and I hit him really hard. But before that, I didn't go after him because I don't want to just, look, he's got his ideas. I knew where I was going. Hannah's been working for probably 8 months doing nothing but working on this housing stuff because I knew his approach wasn't the appropriate approach. But I don't do stuff. I'm not the kind of politician who just throws red meat and goes crazy. I figure it out, solve the problem, get it done. I don't think that buys anything. You know, you don't see me doing a bunch of press releases and stuff. It's just not how different people do stuff. I don't judge it. That's just not how I do it. People come to me to get stuff working. Before I came here, I was working on the wildfires. I was working on rent control. I'm working on privacy. I'm working on all these gigantic issues. I did bail reform last year. It's stuff that's the toughest stuff to do. So I'm trying to figure this stuff out to make it work. So I'm in it. I'm committed, I'm in it. We're working it, and I'm going to come up with a solution that makes sense for all of us here in the San Fernando Valley. But I haven't gone through the details because honestly, it's just not relevant to me. I mean, it's not about what's in it. It's a jailbreak, and we've got to deal with it in an appropriate parliamentary manner.
And you voted against Senate Bill 50, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And those questions were from Kira.
I was the only Democrat until Portantino came in, and Portantino did a great job. He deserves great credit. Didn't support it either, but both of us from here, me and him, we were joined. I have 14 precincts in Burbank, and he has Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena. And he was a great warrior on that. I give him great credit.
Well, speaking of giving credit, I give great credit for Kira Durbin for asking the questions. about those three separate bills. And I'm sorry, I didn't do that first. Lisa Seiden. There she is.
There she is.
Lisa wants to know when you take a look at these housing bills and you try and make up your mind about what bill to do and how dense to make Los Angeles, do you look at the infrastructure and do you actually study it? Do you actually look at economic aspects of it? Because we have a problem with police, with fire, with schools, with our water pipes breaking, and et cetera, et cetera. So when you give somebody some right to build a big building or all over our city with an affordable housing crisis, are you going to be looking at the infrastructure?
Yes, 100% yes. You have to. I mean, there's a bunch of local issues relating to it, but you just have to. They're hugely important. You know, in the development process, you've got to do that. But deeper than that, we talk about that a lot. We spend billions and billions of dollars on stuff. I literally am just working on a bill on capturing stormwater so we can capture it, recharge the groundwater, recycling water so we can capture it. All of those issues, to me, are common sense approach, all of which are to inform and support the infrastructure. But this issue, by the way, of DWP pipes is a big problem, because some of those pipes are 100 years old. And it's not only that and by the way, I did Laura Friedman, who's also represented, you know, Laura Friedman represents the San Fernando Valley. Me and her together did this huge thing on water conservation, and basically about 10% of the pipes, of the water is leaking out of the pipes, because you got broken pipes or leaky pipes. It's a big, 10% is a lot of water. And so I just literally had a bill on that the other day, working on that whole conservation standard. But it is a big problem. It's much bigger than the new developments because this stuff's old. And when you want to take it up, you're taking up streets and affect communities and traffic and all that stuff. It's a big deal. Remember UCLA and all those big water pipe breaks?
Does the state have anything to do with the homeless,
Yes.
not just affordable housing?
Yes.
So Yvette Chambers, are you still here, Yvette?
Where's the vet? Hi,
Yvette's
vet.
over here. She wants to know what, if anything, is the state doing to provide mental services and other social services to the homeless?
Well, one of my best friends is a beautiful, beautiful guy. If you don't know who he is, his name's Darrell Steinberg. He was the president of the Senate. Now he's the mayor of Sacramento. He had a daughter who has had very severe challenges with mental illness, and he put together this unbelievable program that raises about $2 billion a year for mental health services, and it's been very effective. And what we just did in the ballot this last time, which everybody voted on, was we came up with $2 billion dedicated for housing for mentally ill folks. In addition to that, we have probably allocated in money for mental health and for drug abuse, which is a part of the homeless issue. I would guess between that measure, between what the city's done, the county's done, and what we've done in the state, I'm guessing it's north of $6-7 billion. And so there's a lot of effort. We just doubled it. We just huge increase in development so able to pay for people. Because let me tell you something that's really important. This is what I've been working on now for 9 years. I know it's a little crazy, but it's important. Okay? The problem with California is that the way the tax structure works is it's volatile. It's up and down. You've seen these closures and furloughs and all these various things. It goes like this. And so what we've done, and we did this when I was involved outside of government with Arnold Schwarzenschnitzel, I call him, and we created a rainy day fund. And that rainy day fund now is $16.5 billion, so we don't have these ups and downs. In addition, we created a social safety net rainy day fund for social services, so we don't have that problem. I think we just put another $900 million in that. Then we put another rainy day fund for education that we just built, and we also just paid down billions and billions of dollars of pension. 82% of the surplus. And everybody wants to beat up politicians, and there's a lot of reasons for it. But I'm telling you, 82% of the surplus, 21-point-something billion dollars, which is a lot more money than most states that we got, either one-time expenditures, paid down debt, paid down pensions, or went into reserve. We have nearly $20 billion in reserve. So trying to create stability, and part of that process when you look at these services that I really want to get to is the volatility, because you go and you pay for them, and then the next year you're down, you can't pay for them. The next year you're up, and it's not fair to people because people can't do that. And so a big part of the social safety net to be able to provide that is to create a stable revenue stream, which I'm coming back to you on my service tax idea next year, so after everybody wants to beat me up on that, but I got a good idea. It's gonna be good.
There are a heck of a lot more questions. Let me ask just one more, and
You can ask me some more.
and then you'll remain for the period of time necessary. A lot of people have some
Boarding time 10:25.
great questions up here. Some of them don't necessarily relate to state issues, and if you want to, if I don't ask your question, you can come up and ask me if you think that might be the issue. But let me ask something else. Gregory Wright?
Where's Gregory?
There is.
Where?
There he is in the back.
Oh, there he is.
Gregory,
I know him.
He has a number of questions.
Yes.
One of which, let me ask, and he can deal with you on the other ones. We'll wind up with his question, and let me just paraphrase it because it's long. When the state looks at subsidizing housing and planning housing in affordable units, what control, if any, do you put over the kind of development, whether or not people should have cars, whether it should be close to transit? What controls do you do in I might say a zoning fashion?
Yeah, well, we basically, there's a couple of them. And SB 50 tried to do things in a whole different way. But what we do is we give incentives, different densities for if you're close to transit-oriented development. Hannah, was it 8,800, 8,700 housing units have been built next to the orange line? Is that something like that? Did I write about that number? Something like that, because there's incentives to build. You see all those apartments and stuff all along the orange line, by the way, which I was able to get done when I was speaker. It was a good deal. And so that's really the principal area where there has been incentives trying to create transit-oriented development, which then reduces the parking requirement. Let me tell you, I think that we're in the beginning of we're at the middle, I should say, of a very big revolution. This autonomous vehicle thing is going to change communities. It's going to change whether people have garages. It's going to change how big the streets are. It's going to change traffic because, you know, the cars will pick you up and they won't go on the freeway or into the streets until the traffic's open. There's going to be so many significant changes in the coming years because of artificial intelligence and these new technologies that's going to really have an impact on how we plan. And so in my office, there's probably 20 interns right now working on what I call the Millennial Project. How do these kids think? They don't get married until after they're 30. They don't, you know, they don't move out of the house. They live in smaller units. I was talking to one of the interns, and she parks about a mile away when she goes to school, and she picks up one of those scooter things, and she goes from there where she parks to go to school. It's a whole different pattern of how we think, and so I'm trying to really invest in their minds and understand what they're thinking about. So as we begin to create public policy, so much of that public policy is going to be created for them, not for us. And that the changes are so dramatic, in my judgment, about how they think. A lot of people have heard me talk about this, but I've been working now for about 2.5 years on a book called Fresh Eyes, Governing in an Era of Unprecedented Change. And I can end on this because I think it's really important. The world is changing so dramatically. Police, you guys have to walk around with cameras on your chests. You know, the question is use facial recognition. What does that look like? Things that we would never think about before. And we're engaged in this democracy that's supposed to be slow and deliberative, yet we live in a world where everything is Amazon delivered and instantaneous, or looking on your phone for getting information. All these websites that everybody has, it's changed so dramatically. And my co-authors are 22 and 23 years old because they think differently. I'm the old guy who thinks and knows how to get stuff done into the old rules, but I need to be informed like what we're doing in our office with what the next generation is thinking about, because that's who we have to build the future for. And with that, I thanks everybody for having me here. It's good coming down. I've been a member for 30-some years, and I'm never leaving. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And he's going to stay here for an hour or two, whatever you need.